They said someone was watching them. They felt it. They feared it. And then they vanished. These aren't legends. These are real people, whose final moments were full of warning signs no one understood until it was too late. Subscribe for more true crime stories based on real events. Case 1. Brandon Lawson, the 911 call that ended in silence. At 11:54 p.m. on the night of August 8, 2013. Brandon Lawson walked out the front door of his home in San Angelo, Texas, and into a mystery that would baffle investigators, haunt his family, and leave the internet grasping for answers for over a decade. What started as a late-night drive turned into one of the most chilling, unsolved disappearances in recent American memory, all centered around a 911 call that ended in silence. Brandon was 26 years old, a father of 4, and by all accounts, a hard-working man. But like many, he had his struggles. That night, he and his longtime girlfriend, Lawson, had gotten into an argument. Tensions rose. Brandon, who had reportedly relapsed after months of sobriety, stormed out of the house and got into his silver Ford F-150. He told Lawson he was going to his father's house located 3 hours away in Crowley. She thought he just needed to cool off. At 12:30 a.m., about 40 minutes after leaving home, Brandon called his brother Kyle Lawson. He said he had run out of gas on U.S. Route 277 near Bronte, a desolate stretch of highway bordered by scrubland and open ranches. Kyle agreed to bring him a gas can. What neither of them knew was that Brandon's night was about to take a turn for the terrifying. At 12:50 a.m., Brandon made a 911 call. The call connected to a local dispatcher in Coke County. His voice was shaky, panicked. What he said was confusing, fragmented. The call lasted just 43 seconds, but it's become the centerpiece of the entire case. In the recording, Brandon says, "Yes, I'm in the middle of a field inaudible, pushed some guys over. Right here going toward Abilene on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here, the guy's chasing inaudible. Please hurry." The dispatcher asked if he needed an ambulance. Brandon said, "No, I need the cops." Then the call went silent. There was no context, no clear direction, just static fear and a young man seemingly running for his life. Moments later, a trucker called 911 to report Brandon's truck parked awkwardly on the side of the road, its hazard lights blinking. When Kyle arrived around 1:10 a.m., he saw the truck but no sign of Brandon. A sheriff's deputy had arrived shortly before. The officer reportedly saw no signs of distress, just an empty vehicle. Kyle had brought gas but assumed Brandon was hiding nearby because of an outstanding warrant he had at the time. Kyle called out for him but got no response. Strangely, Brandon had called Kyle a few times during the drive, whispering on the phone. At one point, he said, "I'm 10 minutes up the road, just hurry." In another call, he mentioned the Mexicans in the neighborhood and later told Kyle he was bleeding. But he didn't explain from where or how. The calls were erratic, disjointed, and filled with fear. Then his phone went dead. No one ever heard from him again. Authorities searched the area extensively, on foot by helicopter with tracking dogs, but the rugged terrain made the search difficult. There are few trees, but endless mesquite-tall grass and dry creek beds. In daylight, it's harsh and hot. At night, it's black as pitch. If Brandon had wandered into the brush injured, scared, it wouldn't take long for the landscape to swallow him whole. Rumors swirled. Some believed Brandon had hallucinated the entire event, a result of drug use or mental break. Others were convinced he had witnessed something he wasn't supposed to see, possibly a drug deal or violent encounter, and was silenced. A few even believed he had faked his own disappearance to escape legal trouble, though this theory quickly lost credibility due to lack of evidence and his family's insistence that he would never abandon his children. The most haunting part of the case remains the 911 call. Audio experts have tried to clean up the recording, decipher the garbled phrases, and isolate background noise. Some believe multiple voices can be heard in the call, others say it's just distortion. But one line has stood out. "There's one car here. The guy's chasing me." It suggests Brandon wasn't alone that night, that something or someone was out there in the dark with him. For years, the case went cold. Lawson and Kyle pushed for renewed attention. Theories flourished online. The phrase Brandon Lawson 911 call became one of the most searched, unsolved mystery terms on Reddit and YouTube. The case was featured on podcasts, true crime blogs, and investigative shows. But there were no new answers, only questions. Then in February 2022, nearly 9 years later, skeletal remains were found near the area where Brandon disappeared. A piece of clothing was identified as something Brandon had worn the night he vanished. In August 2022, DNA results confirmed the remains belonged to Brandon Lawson, but even this grim discovery brought little closure. No cause of death was released, no explanation for what happened that night, no sign of a struggle weapon or conclusive answer, just silence and an ending that left even more space for the unknown. The truck is gone, the field has grown over, but the call remains. 43 seconds of confusion and fear echoing through static. It's all we have, and it still asks the same question. What really happened to Brandon Lawson in the middle of that Texas night? One of the strangest aspects of Brandon's disappearance was how many people were almost close enough to help, but couldn't. His brother was minutes away. A deputy stood by his truck, and yet Brandon was already lost, possibly just out of sight in the black Texas night. It raises chilling possibilities. Was he injured and just out of reach, or was he taken silenced before help arrived? Some amateur sleuths have scoured satellite images hunting for overlooked details. Others have created digital reconstructions, attempting to trace his last known movements. A few believe the timeline doesn't add up, that perhaps Brandon encountered someone before the 911 call, and that person played a role in his disappearance. No theory, however, has provided a definitive answer. Brandon's family has been vocal over the years. Laspisa has conducted interviews, issued public pleas, and maintained that Brandon would not have simply run away. Kyle, racked with guilt, has revisited the area countless times. For them, the silence isn't just unsettling, it's torment. "We were so close," Kyle once said, and yet he was gone. Online, the case has taken on a life of its own. The audio of Brandon's 911 call has been played and analyzed thousands of times. Every pause, every distorted word, every breath has been studied. Some believe the phrase "they're not talking to me" is buried in the recording. Others insist Brandon says he's in a field bleeding and that someone is chasing me through the woods. The mystery is magnified by the phone call's low quality, just enough information to terrify, but not enough to understand. Despite the recovery of his remains, Brandon's case is still open in the minds of many. Law enforcement has not closed the door on further investigation. There are still people out there who believe someone knows exactly what happened that night and that they've kept quiet all these years. The stretch of Route 277 where Brandon vanished hasn't changed much. It's still remote, still quiet. At night, the wind carries strange sounds across the fields. Some locals avoid stopping there even now. They say it doesn't feel right. Brandon Lawson's story isn't just a mystery, it's a warning about how fast things can unravel, how quickly a person can vanish, and how even with technology, witnesses, and a desperate family searching, some answers may never come. But the question still hangs in the air, just like that final phone call. What happened in the dark that Brandon was so afraid to face alone? Case 2. Emma Fillipoff, the woman who knew she was being watched. On the rainy evening of November 28, 2012, a barefoot young woman stood outside the Empress Hotel in Victoria, British Columbia. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, looked around nervously, and whispered to herself. Her long, curly hair clung to her jacket in the mist. Security cameras caught her pacing for hours, never going inside, never leaving, just waiting. That woman was 26-year-old Emma Fillipoff, and by the next morning, she was gone. Emma's disappearance is one of the most haunting, unsolved cases in Canadian history, not just because she vanished, but because of everything that happened in the hours, days, even leading up to the moment she stepped off the map. Her story is tangled with contradictions, disturbing behaviors, and warnings that were never fully understood. Originally from Ontario, Emma had been living in Victoria for nearly a year, off and on. She stayed at shelters sometimes, in a women's recovery center, occasionally with friends. She was artistic, introspective, and deeply sensitive. She loved nature photography and writing poems. But in the months before her disappearance, something changed. Emma became withdrawn, paranoid. She stopped using her phone. She journaled obsessively, and she began to believe someone was following her. Staff at the shelter she frequented noticed the shift. Emma would stay up all night talking to herself in hushed tones. She avoided people. She began walking barefoot even in the cold. In mid-November, she told a friend she believed someone was watching her and that she needed to get away. On November 23rd, 5 days before she vanished, Emma bought a prepaid cell phone from a 7-Eleven, but she never activated it. That same day, she also borrowed a library computer to look up ferry times to return to Ontario. She called her mother, Shelley Fillipoff, in a panic, telling her she wanted to come home, but moments later, Emma reversed herself. "I'm okay now," she said. "Don't come." Shelley booked a flight anyway. By November 28th, Emma was behaving erratically. She went to a convenience store and bought a $200 prepaid credit card, but again never used it. She also returned to the library, borrowing books on how to disappear. Later that evening, she was spotted at the Empress Hotel, pacing back and forth barefoot and agitated. A concerned staff member called the police. At 8 p.m., officers arrived and spoke with Emma for 45 minutes. She convinced them she was okay. No signs of intoxication, no signs of violence, no legal grounds to detain her, so they let her go. That was the last confirmed sighting. An hour later, her mother landed in Victoria. Shelley had flown across the country frantic, only to be told she had just missed her daughter by minutes. Emma was already gone. The search began immediately. Police brought dogs. Flyers were posted around the city. Shelley spoke to every news outlet she could, but there were no solid leads. Emma's backpack containing her passport, laptop, wallet, and the unused credit cards was found neatly placed in a local shelter. No signs of struggle, no trace of Emma. In the weeks that followed, the mystery deepened. A man came forward saying he had seen Emma that night looking disoriented near the inner harbor. Another claimed she had gotten into a black SUV, but this was never confirmed. The strangest incident came 2 weeks after her disappearance. A man walked into a store in Vancouver an hour away and began removing Emma's missing posters. When confronted, he said, "She's my girlfriend. She just doesn't want to be found." He was never identified. Rumors spread had Emma run away. Was she suffering from a mental health crisis, or had someone taken advantage of her vulnerability? Shelley stayed in Victoria for months, retracing Emma's steps. She gathered journal entries, surveillance footage, witness reports, but every thread led to a dead end. Emma had vanished as if swallowed by the fog. Years passed. Tips came in from across Canada and the U.S. sightings in homeless communities. A woman resembling Emma photographed in California, but none were confirmed. In 2018, human remains were discovered near Ucluelet, British Columbia, sparking fresh speculation. But DNA testing ruled out any connection to Emma. The case remains officially open. No foul play has been confirmed, no body has been found, and no one has ever been charged. What makes Emma's story so disturbing isn't just the disappearance, it's the unraveling before it. She knew something was wrong. She said she felt watched. She made preparations, then backed out. She was clearly afraid, but of what or who? Some believe Emma was suffering from an undiagnosed mental illness, possibly schizophrenia. Her family disputes this, saying she was intuitive spiritual but not unstable. Others believe she may have been the victim of stalking or trafficking targeted because of her fragile state. Some think she chose to vanish, reinvent herself, disappear by design. But why leave everything behind? The footage of Emma at the Empress Hotel still circulates online. In it, she paces like she's waiting for someone or hiding from someone. Her arms are crossed. Her eyes dart to the side. The camera catches her walking into the frame, then back out, then in again. And then, she's gone. What happened to Emma Fillipoff that night in Victoria remains one of Canada's most chilling mysteries. And unless someone speaks or Emma resurfaces, it may never be solved. But one thing is clear: she knew something. She felt something, and no one listened in time. Over the years, Emma's case has drawn comparisons to other mysterious disappearances involving individuals who displayed signs of fear or paranoia shortly before vanishing. But few are as documented or as personal as Emma's. The combination of security footage, journal entries, and haunting eyewitness accounts makes it feel like she was just on the edge of being saved. And yet she slipped away. One of the most chilling theories revolves around the Empress Hotel itself. Some have speculated that Emma was waiting for someone there, possibly someone who never showed up, or worse, someone who did. The fact that she stayed in that one spot, pacing, seemingly unable to leave or move on, suggests a psychological trap. She was tethered there emotionally or literally, and when the police left, she may have been more vulnerable than ever. Others believe the police failed her. After spending nearly an hour talking with Emma, they determined she posed no threat to herself or others. But to anyone watching the footage, it's clear something was wrong. Her pacing, her body language, the lost expression in her eyes, it all paints a picture of someone who needed help, but couldn't articulate what she was afraid of. Shelley Fillipoff has become an advocate for families of the missing. She continues to raise awareness about Emma's case, urging better mental health training for first responders and more resources for adults in crisis. Her frustration is matched only by her grief. Emma wasn't invisible, she once said. She was seen. She was heard. But still no one could reach her. In 2021, the Victoria Police released a renewed public appeal encouraging anyone with information to come forward. The case remains active, though leads have slowed. Still, every few months, a new tip arrives, someone claiming to have seen Emma in another city, another province, another life. Each one brings hope followed by disappointment. What happened after that final moment outside the Empress Hotel? Did Emma wander off into the city disoriented and afraid? Was she lured into a car by someone who knew her vulnerabilities? Did she finally act on her impulse to vanish and start over somewhere else? No one knows. But what makes Emma's case resonate is how familiar her fear feels. We've all had moments of doubt, moments of looking over our shoulder. Emma verbalized those feelings again and again, and yet when she needed help the most, the system failed her. Society saw the signs but couldn't read them, and so a barefoot girl stood in the rain, and then she was gone. The question still echoes through Victoria's misty streets. Where is Emma Fillipoff Case 3? Bryce Laspisa, The Road to Nowhere. On the morning of August 30th, 2013, a highway patrol officer found an overturned 2003 Toyota Highlander at the bottom of a 25-foot embankment near Castaic Lake in Southern California. The vehicle was heavily damaged. The back window had been kicked out. Inside were a laptop, a phone, and a wallet. But the driver, 19-year-old Bryce Laspisa, was nowhere to be found. And he has never been seen since. Bryce's disappearance is one of the most baffling modern missing person cases in California. Not because he vanished in the middle of nowhere, but because in the days leading up to it, he was surrounded by people. He called his parents. He visited friends. He was recorded on camera. And yet somewhere between a gas station and a quiet curve near a lake, he vanished. Bryce had just started his sophomore year at Sierra College in Rocklin, California. By all accounts, he was charismatic, artistic, and deeply intelligent. He had a passion for graphic design and was close with his parents who lived in Orange County. But in the final days of August 2013, Bryce's behavior began to change. He started giving away his belongings, his Xbox, some personal items to friends. He broke up with his girlfriend via text, telling her she would be better off without him. Friends said he was acting strangely quiet, 1 minute hyper the next. He began drinking heavily, and it was later revealed he had been taking Vivancy, a prescription stimulant, possibly without a prescription. The combination may have triggered a psychological spiral. On August 28th, Bryce called his mother and said he had something important to talk to her about, but he never said what it was. The next day, he got into his car and left campus, supposedly headed home to see his parents in Laguna Niguel. That trip should have taken about 7 hours. Instead, Bryce spent the next 36 hours driving in circles. Surveillance footage shows him buying a drink at a gas station in Buttonwillow, California, 3 hours south of where he started. The clerk remembered him, said he was calm, polite. But instead of continuing home, Bryce stayed parked in that area for hours. His parents, growing concerned, called roadside assistance when he ran out of gas. The tow truck driver said Bryce seemed lucid but tired. He even took a photo of Bryce standing next to his car. Still, Bryce didn't come home. At 11 p.m. on August 29th, Bryce spoke to his parents one last time. He told them he was too tired to drive and would pull over to rest before completing the journey. They agreed, but just a few hours later at approximately 2 a.m., his SUV was discovered crashed at Castaic Lake, an area roughly 90 miles from his destination. The rear window had been kicked out from the inside, indicating Bryce may have escaped the wreck. Police dogs tracked his scent to the road, then lost it. No blood was found in the car, no signs of a struggle. Nothing suggested Bryce was injured, but he was gone. The lake was searched extensively by divers and sonar. The woods nearby were combed for days. Flyers went up. Helicopters scanned the terrain. But there was no sign of him, not a shoe, not a scrap of clothing, nothing. Bryce Laspisa had vanished into thin air. For his parents, the most haunting part is the timeline. They were in touch with him for nearly the entire 36-hour span. They knew where he was. They offered to come get him. At one point, they begged him to wait where he was and rest. He said he would. Then he drove off and disappeared. Why, many theories have been proposed. Some believe Bryce experienced a mental break, possibly drug-induced, and wandered into the wilderness disoriented, eventually succumbing to the elements. But no body was ever found. Others think he staged his own disappearance, perhaps to escape pressure or reinvent himself. But he left behind his wallet, ID, phone, everything. A darker theory suggests foul play. Could someone have picked him up from the crash site? Was he abducted after walking away from the wreck? But again, no evidence supports this. No witnesses, no camera footage, no motive. The Laspisas refuse to believe their son would vanish voluntarily. They describe him as loving, open, not someone who would hide or run. And so they wait. They maintain a website, share updates, keep his story alive. His face still appears on missing person databases, still draws clicks and theories. But 10 years later, there are no answers. One of the strangest details that continues to puzzle investigators is the SUV's path. Tire tracks showed that Bryce had slowly driven up a hill, then accelerated down the embankment intentionally, as if he meant to crash. But why escape afterward? Why not stay by the road where help would surely arrive? Was he trying to harm himself? Or was he running from something? The crash site itself is eerie, a lonely road curving along a lake. At night, it's pitch black. Locals say you can hear coyotes howling. Occasionally, people leave flowers or candles where the SUV was found. But no memorial stone has been placed. It feels unfinished, just like the story. In recent years, there have been alleged sightings, none confirmed. A man resembling Bryce seen in homeless shelters. A blurry photo taken in Arizona. A tip from someone claiming he now goes by another name. But every lead falls apart under scrutiny. Bryce remains missing. For those who follow the case, the emotions run deep. Sadness, frustration, obsession. How does someone stay on the phone with their parents for hours, then vanish minutes later? How does a crash that looked survivable lead to absolute silence? The answer, it seems, lies not in what Bryce did, but what he was feeling. Something changed inside him in those final days. A shift his friends noticed, his girlfriend feared, and his parents couldn't stop. Whether it was chemical, psychological, or emotional, it pushed him further and further out of reach, and then it took him all together. Bryce Laspisa's case remains open. His family still hopes he's alive somewhere, struggling but safe. They still believe the right tip might one day break it all open. Until then, the highway near Castaic Lake remains quiet. The curve is still there. So is the embankment. The grass has grown back, but the mystery remains. Where did Bryce go after kicking out the window, and why did he never come back? His story is often cited as a warning about the silent nature of internal distress, how someone can appear functional on the outside while privately unraveling. Bryce wasn't a drifter or someone estranged from his family. He was expected home. He was talking to people. And yet in his final hours, something drove him off the map. Psychologists have speculated that Bryce may have been experiencing a dissociative episode. Under the combined effects of emotional stress, stimulant use, and possible sleep deprivation, he could have lost touch with reality, choosing flight over reason. But the calculated nature of his driving patterns complicates that theory. He wasn't just wandering, he was stopping, waiting, calling, planning. Even the tow truck driver who interacted with him described Bryce as normal, just quiet. That's what makes it so disturbing. There were no screams, no obvious cries for help. Only breadcrumbs, a text here, a call there, a quiet crash in the dark. The Laspisa family continues to mark the anniversary of Bryce's disappearance every August. They host vigils and remain active in missing persons networks. Their love has never wavered, nor has their hope. If Bryce is out there, his mother once said, we want him to know we'll never stop looking. The truth may still be out there somewhere between the crash site and the vast unknown beyond it. Until it's found, the question lingers like a low echo off the lake. What happened to Bryce Laspisa that night? They told us something was wrong. They asked for help, and still they disappeared. Brandon, Emma, Bryce, their names are real. Their stories are unfinished. Until the truth is found, we keep asking what were they running from and who was really watching. Subscribe for more true crime stories based on real events.